Welcome back to Pro-Life Without Borders with Sarah and Mikayla. Today is our election special.
Yes.
So if you have not voted yet, please vote.
Yes.
If you are, so there are some people, and I don't think the ads help, honestly. So I'm so frustrated with political ads by this point. I'm like, I don't even care who wins, which is not true.
I was feeling this. I was feeling someone yesterday. Like at this point, I just want it to be over so that I can deal with whatever fallout needs to be dealt with.
Right. Versus the constant barrage of ads. And last week we talked about one of the ads and then we posted a few examples and they're just so crazy,
I'm just so tired of it.
Yes. So
and if I get one more text or phone call,
I have reported so many people as junk. And one of the campaigns is still hardcore raising money. And I'm like, for what? At this point, what are you spending it on?
Well, and it's frustrating too because I know how I'm casting my vote. I've known how I'm casting my vote for a long time now.
Yeah, there was no decision making in my world.
No, it's the same decision that I've made before.
Yes.
It's just I already know. That being said, if I get one more text message I need your vote, it's making me reconsider just to be like, please, you have my vote. You're going to lose it if you text me one more time.
Text him back. Shut up!
Just leave me alone. I have done what you've asked me to do. Just stop texting me.
So that being said, most people already know who they're voting for, but there is a significant group of people who are not sure. Yeah. And a lot of those people will choose not to vote.
Yes.
Or they will choose to vote one way or another based on one issue. Mm-hmm. And obviously, because we're the Pro-Life Without Borders podcast, the issue we're going to talk about today is pro-life. So One of the things that keeps coming up and up and up, and articles are being released in, frankly, a very strategic fashion about these cases to prove, in quotes, that we need legal abortion.
Yes.
And so Mikayla and I are going to take a look at some of these cases and we're going to discuss them one at a time. And we're going to show how legal abortion is not necessary in these cases.
Yes.
And so if you are not sure who you want to vote for because of this issue, please listen to this before you make a final decision or share it with your friends. And obviously we're not political savants. Probably we shouldn't release this the day of the election and we should have released it 2 weeks ago. But you know what?
We had going on.
We just got new microphones and figured out that you should put them on the side that you turn your head to. So we're not operating with a lot over here.
Yeah. I also think it's important to note that there are things on ballots other than just the presidential election.
Yes.
So that's obviously the big one on the ballot this year because every 4 years. But I know Pennsylvania, we have senator election.
Yep. Very important.
And that greatly impacts things, especially because of the Dobbs decision and abortion theoretically being put back to the states.
Yes.
So please vote.
And research and vote for all the positions that are being up, not just the presidential one. Yes. Although that is the one that gets the most attention.
It is.
Just be careful. This is going to be my funny story, which is not really part of the podcast, but should be because I tell one as much as possible.
Right.
I read an article. This is going to sound very vague because it is very vague. I read an article about a gentleman. I don't even know what state he was in. He was showing his kids how to vote, took them and showed them the write-in. And he thought oh, I'll show them how to write in a candidate. So of course he wrote in his own name and he elected himself to office.
Oh.
But it was a very local, very small, very whatever. But he served his term.
Well, I mean, that's what you got to do. If you accidentally elect yourself, you should at least serve it out.
Can you imagine though, getting the phone call that you won the election and you're like, what election? He became an accidental.
By one vote. The vote was you.
Can you imagine how much he could have won if he campaigned? He could have gotten 3 votes. Anyway.
I love local elections, but yeah, they're important and you should vote in them and just recognize that the ballot is more than a presidential election.
All right, so let's dive in because we have a bunch of cases to cover.
Yes.
So we are actually going to start with I don't want to say easy because none of these cases are easy.
No.
But we're going to we have grouped them in a certain way. So we're ending with what I would consider to be the most tragic and difficult case.
Yes.
Now, all of them have their own level of tragedy and difficulty.
Yes.
And I want you to hear this, rewind it and play it again if you need to. The key, we have to have compassion for these women and their children and their families, regardless of the choices that they made, regardless of how we feel about their choices or we feel about their decisions or their ideas or their desires. Compassion, compassion, compassion.
Well, and reading through all of these cases, like, it's just sad. Every single one of them is sad. And some of them I think are more difficult than others, sure, but they're all sad to some extent or another. Either people made decisions that are sad or we're in situations that are sad. I mean, all of it's just very sad.
And that's really, it's the, to kind of start the Jesus moment early, I guess. I mean, the whole podcast is a Jesus moment. We just love
It's
Jesus.
Just one giant Jesus moment.
We sin.
People
sin.
Bad
And
choices.
because of sin, whether it's our own sin or someone else's sin or just the fallenness of creation, is fallenness a word?
It is now.
It is now. The fact that creation is broken, like that we broke it, humanity broke it, causes these cases. And no, we cannot legislate sin away.
No.
So even if you have every single person in the situation that is trying to honor God, trying to do the right thing, people are going to make mistakes because we live in a broken, fallen world. Right. And these are not cases where every single person is trying to honor God.
Right.
And so we have to realize that we cannot legislate sin out of our lives. It's always going to be present until Christ comes back and fixes the world. We're going to have tragedy and death and grief and brokenness. Yeah. And that sucks, if I could say sucks.
It's our podcast.
Yeah, say whatever we want. But that's just the way it is.
Right. So to start things off, we have a case out of Texas. And this is just known as the Kate Cox case. And so just to give, I guess, a brief rundown of this case, Kate Cox was a woman who received an adverse fetal diagnosis. So baby was diagnosed with trisomy 18, full trisomy 18. Which is something that is typically incompatible with life.
Yes.
Right? Like you're...
At least any kind of... Not always, but a full... So there's mosaic trisomy 18.
Right.
Sometimes you can live for years or even for all we know, there's people walking around with very low levels of mosaicism that don't even know it.
Right.
And then, but full trisomy 18, yes, is typically incompatible with life. Sometimes you can use support to get them to a certain level.
Right.
But typically, it's fatal, unfortunately.
Right. So she knew before she even received this full trisomy 18 diagnosis, we're talking fetus had twisted spine, clubbed feet, irregular skull, irregular heart development, and then was an amniocentesis diagnosed full trisomy 18.
Okay. Which is awful.
And so she was wanting to seek an abortion. For full trisomy 18, but in Texas, the law was that a doctor to perform an abortion, it would be an exercise of reasonable medical judgment, and typically determines that the patient is experiencing a life-threatening physical condition.
The patient being the mother.
Yes. Aggravated by, caused by, or arising from a pregnancy that places the female at risk of death or poses a serious risk of substantial impairment of a major bodily function. Mm-hmm. And so she joined a lawsuit that was actually already filed. So there was this lawsuit that was going in Texas, and at first it was denied because the people who signed up for the lawsuit were not women actively seeking abortions. And Texas was like, you can't just file a lawsuit like that.
You have to actually have an experience.
Right. And
you can't just say, oh, I'm mad and I want to file a lawsuit.
Right. So this lady who now was trying to seek an abortion because of an adverse fetal diagnosis, joined in on this lawsuit and was denied the right to an abortion.
Right. Now what happened with her? Did she leave the state or did she have the baby?
Texas rules that her life is not, there's not a threat to her life.
Right, because there wasn't.
Right. And so Texas essentially said, you're free to leave the state, but you can't get an abortion here.
Right.
So if you want to go get an abortion, you have to go get an abortion somewhere else, which she did. So she, her lawyers announced that she couldn't wait any longer and was leaving Texas to get an abortion. So that's how that case ended. Mm-hmm. And of course, people are saying that, she's been denied care. And she wasn't.
No.
She was told that if you want an abortion, you have to leave the state of Texas.
Well, and the thing is, you don't have to have an abortion because your child has been diagnosed with an adverse prenatal diagnosis.
Well, and that's what this ruling was saying, like, hey, this exception, this exemption is for people whose lives are at risk, and the mother's life wasn't at risk.
No.
It's just the reality of it.
And I would say of our stack of cases, this is the most straightforward.
Right.
You don't get to kill someone just because they're disabled.
And it was really sad because she, this woman, Kate, they have a quote from her in this article by the Texas Tribune. And it says, "I do not want to put my body through the risks of continuing this pregnancy," she said. "I do not want to continue until my baby dies in my belly, or I have to deliver a stillborn baby, or one where life will be measured in hours or days." And I think it just goes to show, I mean, obviously, this is such a sad case.
It is.
No one wants to see a baby die.
Mm-hmm.
Full trisomy 18 is awful. But is that what we're measuring life by now?
Like, if you don't live long enough, it's not worth it.
Right.
And this one hits,
days
are still better than nothing.
Are better than nothing. But I have friends who've had babies whose lives are measured in minutes. And she was just as much a person as I am, or anyone else's baby.
So this one actually hits close to home for me. As most of you know, if you've listened to the podcast, I'm the mother of 2 adopted embryos. One of their biological siblings that I did not adopt had trisomy 18 and passed after 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
He was so loved, and his life has had an incredible impact on this world. Like, incredible. I can't even guesstimate how much of an impact his life has had on this world. And it hurts my heart to think that, like, she didn't want that.
Right.
Like, that she wanted to have an abortion just because. And I'm not trying to minimize it. Like, I get that it's hard. It would be awful to have to lose your baby that way. But, like, abortion is still losing your baby.
Right.
You're not changing anything. You're not fixing anything. You're just ending your baby's life faster. Right. And honestly, more violently.
Exactly. So this case was very straightforward in that it wasn't legal in Texas. She wanted an exemption, and she didn't get the exemption because the exemption is for women whose lives were at risk, and hers was not. And so Texas essentially said, you could leave the state, you just can't do it here. So she left the state and got an abortion.
Yeah. But there's no need to change Texas law because of this case.
No, because Texas law had those exemptions in place. She simply didn't qualify for them. Right. Like, her life wasn't at risk.
All right, who's next?
We have Candy Miller. And this is a case out of Georgia, which there were a couple of cases. Georgia and Texas are kind of, because they do have very strict abortion regulations. Mm-hmm. A lot of these cases come from there. And so Candy Miller is different from Kate Cox in that Candy Miller actually died. And so this is a case where we now have 2 lives that have been lost, mm-hmm. Which is very, very sad. And so Candy Miller was a woman. She had some health issues. It says here she had lupus, diabetes, and hypertension. And so she ended up being pregnant and was scared to go to any sort of doctor because she had heard about legal risks for obtaining an abortion. She's in Georgia. And so she goes online and she orders abortion pills online, and has complications from that.
Which is not surprising.
Which is not, and even though this is from ProPublica, talks about how these are rare side effects, that they're actually not.
1 in 25.
Yeah, that's not rare.
Yeah, 1 in 25 women who will take abortion pills at home, regardless of how they got them, will end up in the emergency room.
Yes.
That's very high.
So she takes the abortion pills that she got online, does not expel all of the fetal tissue.
Which is unfortunately common.
Okay, and so she develops sepsis. But she is too scared to go to the emergency room, and so she suffers at home, and it says here she spent days suffering, bedridden and moaning, and they eventually found her unresponsive. Now, an autopsy is when they found unexpelled fetal tissue, and so they determined that her abortion had not been fully completed. However, they were unable to determine the manner of death because She also had a lethal combination of painkillers in her system, including fentanyl.
So she was having a lot of pain.
So now her family says there's no history of drug use. Medical records state there's no history. Her family has no idea where she got them from, what was going through her mind, whether she was trying to quell the pain, complete the abortion, end her life. And so for that reason, there's no like definitive, this is how she died.
And I wish this is the case, one of them, I think there might be two, but this is one of the cases where I wish she had found our website and messaged us, because we would have told her, go to the emergency room. You're not going to get in trouble. You're not going to be prosecuted, and you need care right now. Because how many times have we had that conversation?
Right.
A zillion times. And they need women who are in this situation. Now, I wish she had never ordered the abortion pills.
Yeah.
Like, I wish she had gone to a pregnancy center and she had chosen life and she'd had the support she needed to have a healthy pregnancy. However, after ordering the abortion pills and having these symptoms, she needed emergency care. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to ask the question, why was she afraid?
Exactly.
Well, how many, like the ads we talked about last week.
Right.
Like basically like showing women handcuffed to beds and showing women being pulled over and forced to take a pregnancy test on the side of the road. That's why she's afraid. It's not because of the abortion bans. It's because of the rhetoric that's being pushed to say, you're going to be arrested, you're going to be thrown in jail, on and on and on. And the reality is she could have gone to her local emergency room and gotten the care that she needed, and she would still be here today.
Right. So, and this is the first case we've talked about where she's using abortion pills. And so the article, which obviously has a very pro-choice slant, right? They're talking about how abortion bans and whatnot. But this article says she ordered abortion pills for about $80 from Aid Access.
Mm-hmm. And that's the one that's based in the UK.
Yes. And so patients contact a doctor in Europe who sends them pills from a supplier in India. So
who knows what she got?
So there's really no saying what she got. But of course, its founder of Aid Access said it was clear the abortion pill did not cause her death.
So clear.
And you're like, I don't understand how it's clear, because even the people
even
who are doing
if
the
she
autopsy
died
are saying we actually can't determine what caused
Well, the
this.
thing is, even if she died from the drugs, she was probably taking the drugs because she was in agony.
Right. So
like, especially
her
if there's no history of drug use, she was probably in horrible pain and she was trying to like deal with it.
Right. So her autopsy found extremely high doses of something that I cannot pronounce, but is the main ingredient in Benadryl.
Okay.
Diphenhydramine.
Sure.
And acetaminophen, which is Tylenol.
Yeah.
All right, along with the fentanyl. So they said, considering the quantity of drugs and the timing of her death, the committee also did not suspect the abortion pills themselves were in any way tainted.
Well, I think what they're saying then is the abortion pills themselves were not like poisoning her.
Sure,
but the incomplete abortion, the incomplete abortion certainly caused the pain, which caused her to take the drugs. And so this is not an issue of abortion bans. First of all, she could have gotten health care to have a healthy pregnancy, even with lupus, even with diabetes.
And hypertension, those are things that are manageable. Like, yeah. I do not want to
they're serious.
Discredit, right? Yeah. Like someone going through those things, but I have a lot of friends who have diabetes and have had pregnancies.
Mm-hmm.
And I've very healthy, normal pregnancies.
Yeah, and I've worked with clients who've had lupus.
Right.
It's not easy, but it is manageable. Mm-hmm. She could have left the state to procure a legal abortion if she really wanted to. Obviously not a choice that we would encourage. Mm-hmm. But really what it came down to is even after using illegal abortion pills, she should have accessed emergency help. And that's the message that women need to hear. If you take abortion pills, go and you have complications, or even if you don't, go to the emergency room, get checked out, go to your OB and be honest about what you took, because no one's being prosecuted for taking abortion pills.
And I think one of the things that's just really sad about this case, and you and I have dealt with this, I don't even know how many times on the chat line. This article says Miller's family does not know how far along her pregnancy was when she took the abortion pills.
She could have been very, very far along.
She could have been very far along. And it is dangerous to take abortion pills without having an ultrasound to confirm placement, to confirm gestation. Mm-hmm. Like there's things, this could have potentially, well, we know this could have been prevented. Yeah. But an ultrasound, it's vital. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that if she had an ultrasound, things would have turned out differently, but there's a lot of missing information here.
There is. And it's not our business. But what we can say is abortion bans did not cause this death.
No, it's fear-mongering, because the very last thing that this article states is a quote from her son. And her son says, if you get caught trying to do anything to get rid of the baby, you get jail time for that.
And that's
I
not
don't
true.
know who told him that.
It's not accurate.
Not true. It's not accurate. You know, and it even says some state bans explicitly say women can't be prosecuted.
Yep.
So
yeah, not abortion bans.
Not abortion bans. So that's, I mean, and someone died. There's 2 lives.
Yeah, and she and her baby should both be alive today.
Yeah.
And that's the point of the abortion bans.
Right.
To keep babies alive.
And this is not an abortion ban gone wrong. This is not an abortion ban's fault. This is, 1, aid access, supplying people pills from India. But 2,
fear.
This is misinformation.
Fear mongering and being afraid to go to the hospital because you think you're going to go to jail, when that's not the case. She should have felt very comfortable seeking emergency care.
Yeah.
And she would have been taken care of.
Yeah.
And hopefully, and honestly, I really believe it probably could have been, her death could have been avoided.
Yeah.
And that's very frustrating and saddening.
Yeah. And so kind of along those same threads, we have another case, and this is probably the case that people have heard the most of.
Mm-hmm.
This is the case of Amber Thurman.
And she also passed away.
And so Amber Thurman was also from Georgia, and she also passed away. Now, she also was trying to do a chemical abortion. She took abortion pills.
Where does it say where she got hers?
Yes.
Where she got hers?
She was pregnant with, is this one that she was pregnant with twins? So I believe she was pregnant with twins. And she was pregnant with twins. She was already beyond what Georgia would allow for an abortion, and so she took a road trip to North Carolina, where a clinic gave her abortion pills. And this article says, abortion pills have very low rates of complications, but rare problems to occur. In Thurman's case, not all of the pregnancy tissue had been expelled. So
just like with Candy.
Same thing with Candy. She's retaining tissue.
And I would say, based on the chat line, this is not uncommon.
It's really not.
We mostly work with international women, but women are women, bodies are bodies, and abortion pills are abortion pills. Mm-hmm. And so the number of women that we have that say, I took the abortion pills, but they're still bleeding, mm-hmm. sometimes bleeding very heavily, like scary heavy. They're having pain, they're having like purulent discharge, they're having, all these issues. It's typically related to an incomplete abortion. Mm-hmm. So their body has not expelled all of the tissue that is inside.
Mm-hmm. So she does go to the emergency room because she's had bleeding, pain, and falling blood pressure, which are all telltale signs of infection. Mm-hmm. Now, they're saying that Georgia has outlawed the DNC procedure, making it a felony to perform except in cases of managing a spontaneous or naturally occurring miscarriage. And because Thurman had taken abortion pills, it would have been a felony.
Which is not true.
For a doctor to do a DNC. Now, they did ultimately decide to do a DNC 20 hours later.
And this makes me mad because that's not. So yeah, you can't do a DNC as an abortion, but it doesn't matter whether she took pills or spontaneously miscarried or had an abortion out of state or fill in the blank. Right. The baby's not alive. You can do a DNC.
Right. And so she ended up dying from infection, right? Because of this delayed DNC. And one, I would just like to reiterate, this is very sad. But this is, again, not a case where abortion bans have killed a woman.
This is a case where fear-mongering has killed women.
Fear-mongering.
Just like Candy's too afraid to go to the hospital because she thinks she's going to go to jail. Amber, potentially, I would say very likely delayed emergency care for the same reason. And then when she gets there, she's being told, we don't know what to do because of the abortion bans. And it shouldn't be unclear. It should be very clear to doctors that you can do a DNC on someone who has a failed abortion from out of state or even an illegal abortion. Like, this isn't a question. No pro-lifer is saying that women have to die because they attempted an illegal abortion. And if they are, they're crazy. Okay, don't even listen to them. I don't want women to have abortions. I don't want women to choose illegal abortion or abortion pill or go out of state or do any of the things. But once they're in that situation, by golly, we want to help them.
Well, and it's really frustrating too, because this article, which is written by The Guardian, right? And so The Guardian is writing things like DNCs require no special equipment, which I don't think is true.
No, you literally need.
I've never had a DNC.
In order to
but
do dilation and curettage, you need tools to perform the dilation, and then you guessed it, curettage. Like, what do you mean no special? What are they going to go into? Like,
a DNC requires no special equipment and takes only about 15 minutes.
That part is true. It is quick.
Yeah, I was like, I know that it's quick, but like, there's definitely special equipment involved. Maybe they mean like a hospital doesn't have to have like a maternity ward.
Oh, that's probably true. I'm like, what are they going to use? Like a tongue depressor?
Well, that's what I was like, I don't understand this. But they're also saying, like they write very definitively, if the tissue had been promptly removed, she probably would have been fine. We don't know that.
We don't know that.
We don't know that.
But at the same time, okay, and this is what frustrates me, is this idea that, oh, women have died, which is tragic and should not happen. They should have gotten the care that they needed. But hey, this is why abortion needs to be legal. Absolutely not. You can argue that we need more clarity regarding the laws, that doctors need to be able to make decisions in emergency situations to save women, and there should be some protection there. Now, the problem with the freedom to make decisions is you're going to have doctors who are performing abortions and claiming later, oh, you can't come after me because I have freedom to make decisions. Mm-hmm. And that's where it becomes an issue, because of the sinfulness and the fallenness of man, that we try to legislate people into doing what they're supposed to do, and people are going to try to get around it. Mm-hmm. But what we need is clarity about the law and clarity regarding how women can be treated in life-threatening circumstances.
Right. We've got to stop the spread of misinformation and fear-mongering that's circulating.
Yes.
Because it's killing women.
It is killing women. And it's not the abortion bans killing women. It's the fear-mongering and the hype that's killing women.
Yeah. And so, again, this is another sad case where people have made decisions, right? She couldn't get an abortion in Georgia, so she went to North Carolina and obtained one legally there. But
and my question is, where was the clinic in North Carolina? Where was their follow-up care?
Well, that's what I was like, this woman, you and I both know, like, follow-up care is required.
Or it should be
for abortion. And there's obviously no such thing as a safe abortion, but there is such a thing as safer options or, decisions, like following up with the clinic where you got your abortion pills from.
Right. And what was the clinic's plan for follow-up care for an out-of-state patient?
Right.
Like, did she have an appointment scheduled with her OBGYN? Did she have an appointment to return to the clinic in North Carolina and get a follow-up? Did anyone call her? How are you feeling? What are your symptoms? How long was it between when she started having symptoms and having issues and she went to the emergency room? Did that 20-hour delay actually mean the end of her life? Why was there a 20-hour delay? Was it actually because the doctors didn't think they could do anything? These are the questions that aren't being answered, or at least they're not in the news, which is fine because it's not really our business, right?
Right.
But at the same time, like, there's a lot of factors here, and it's not, the abortion bans did not kill her.
No,
they did not.
No, they didn't, and it's very sad. And they ultimately, the medical board in Georgia ruled that her death could have been prevented, and I agree 100%.
Oh, for sure,
100%. Yeah, this could have been prevented.
She should have had,
not because of abortion bans.
Yeah, well, the first thing she could have done was not have an abortion.
Sure.
The second thing would have been follow up with the abortion clinic that she went to, because they should have caught these symptoms. They should be educating women about what to look for, and what, instead of just touting how safe and beautiful and wonderful the abortion pill is, actually say, hey, these are the things you need to watch for. These are the symptoms you need to be concerned about.
Well, I'll tell you what, dying from an abortion pill certainly doesn't sound like just a period to me.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's what
they're being told. It's just like a period.
Really, I've never died from my period.
Yeah. It makes me really angry. She should not. Candy and Amber should both be alive today. And honestly, their baby should be alive today.
Yeah.
And abortion bans could have saved their babies.
Yeah. Right. Because,
and them.
Kate Cox, her baby had full trisomy 18.
Yeah.
Very likely it was going to have a shorter life than what anyone would have wanted.
Right.
These two women's babies,
as far as we know, are genetically normal.
And they, their lives were in tech risk.
Yeah. This next one is the weirdest.
It's weird, and I just want to give a disclaimer that it's graphic, and I think you need to hear this.
So if you don't want to hear it, just fast forward a few minutes.
And I'll put a little I don't know, something that's just
fast forward to this point, and you'll get through it. But this is something that happens with home abortions, and this is something that Mikayla and I have both seen an unfortunate number of times.
Yes, and I'm actually I'm glad obviously not glad that this has happened. I'm glad that something like this has come up in the news, even though they've spun it to something ridiculous, just because people don't talk about it. And at least this way, it's like, okay, we're recognizing that trauma is happening in these homes.
Yes.
And so the headline, this is an article from CNN, and the headline says, a woman who had a miscarriage is now charged with abusing a corpse as stricter abortion laws play out nationwide.
Which is such a weird juxtaposition.
Which is a weird headline, because I would like to point out this has nothing to do with abortion laws. But essentially what happened is there's a woman, this is out of Ohio, and she's been charged with the felony abuse of a corpse. And it all comes down to she was miscarrying.
So she was not attempting an abortion to our knowledge.
Attempting an abortion. She went into the ER with, like vaginal bleeding and cramps, right? Just kind of like your standard red flags of a pregnancy. And she was diagnosed with premature rupture of membranes.
Which is what happened to me with the twins.
So, in other words, her water had broken prematurely, and she had exceptionally low, if any, amniotic fluid. Now, a fetal heartbeat was found, and so it was recommended by medical staff that an induction occur of the non-viable fetus, even though there was a fetal heartbeat.
Right. And so at her stage, she was what, 17 weeks?
She was 21 weeks and 5 days.
Okay, so at most hospitals, 21 weeks and 5 days is not considered viable.
No.
There are some hospitals that will attempt to save a baby at that stage.
And so in Ohio, abortions are legal until fetal viability, which is generally considered to be between 22 and 24 weeks. And again, you and I both know that fetal viability is already like an iffy
It's a very,
term, because viability is, it's getting earlier and earlier.
And babies have been known to survive at 21 weeks, 5 days. Now, there's a certain amount of trauma associated with the rupture of membranes.
Sure.
That is going to reduce the chances, but they're not zero.
Right. And so they decide like an induction is the best thing here.
Which is not an abortion.
Now, however, she signs herself out of the hospital against medical advice. So she leaves,
which
AMA.
Doesn't make any sense. So abortion, this is the weirdest thing about this story to me. She's being offered an induction after premature rupture of membranes, and she leaves.
Right. And it says here that CNN asked her attorney about why she left, and they didn't get an answer. So they offer an induction. She leaves. She comes back the next day for the same issue, and again left against medical advice. So
this is interesting because this is similar to my story at this point. Except I was 15 weeks, so definitely not viable, and I was also offered an induction.
Right.
To like essentially deliver the babies, both of them at 15 weeks, they would have died, and I declined. But when I declined, I was then given like a plan.
Right.
But like if you check out AMA, if you check out against medical advice, you don't have a plan. You don't have discharge papers typically, because you just like sometimes you sign papers and stuff. Like I get that, but it sort of sounds like she just walked out.
Right. And so she's, for the second time now, left. And then she later returned, like later that day or the next day, to be induced, which was what
they had offered. Yeah.
They had offered. And I believe is fairly standard for that gestational age and what was going on. But then it says, but for hours, doctors and officials mulled the ethics of inducing labor for a woman who had been diagnosed with preterm premature rupture of membranes, had no detectable amniotic fluid, was bleeding vaginally, and had advanced cervical dilation.
Which is very bizarre to me.
That they would offer it to her 3 times and then
mull.
And then suddenly mull about it.
Now they're mulling.
And
now we're mulling.
Again, it says Watts eventually left. So
3 times.
So 3 times she's now left the emergency room. It says then on September 22nd, so 2 days later, she returned to the hospital for vaginal bleeding with retained placenta after a home delivery. So she
has at this point delivered a 22-week baby at home.
Yes.
And when she returned to the hospital, so this is, again, unfortunately, something that both Mikayla and I have dealt with on the chat line multiple times. This is not a one-time thing.
No.
And so we tell every woman in this situation, go to back to the hospital, take the baby with you. Take any like bloody towels, take any tissue, take everything with you to the hospital and go to the hospital.
Yes.
This woman did not. Now, again, I wish she had messaged us.
Sure.
Because we could have coached her, we could have walked her through this situation, we could have explained, yes, you need to go back to the hospital. We understand that you're frustrated. We understand that you've been there 3 times and you don't feel like, I'm assuming she didn't feel like she was getting the care she needed because otherwise she wouldn't have left.
Right. And
I mean, who knows?
I don't know what she wanted, like at essentially 22 weeks. Like, I don't know what her expectations were. Right. I don't know what the conversations were, what she wanted. Like, I have no idea.
No, and nobody does except for her, honestly.
Right.
But we would have advised her, gather everything up and go back to the emergency room.
So the hospital staff notified the police department that she had come in because she's delivered and she shows up with no baby.
Right. And the thing is, a baby at 22 weeks, while very, very fragile, is technically, in some states, in some hospitals, counties, whatever, considered viable. So is there a living baby somewhere is the question in everyone's head.
That's the question. And so they contacted the police, which is a 100% normal response, I think, to do because you don't know.
Right.
So the police go out to this woman's house. The woman stated to the police she had taken the fetus out of the toilet and placed it in a black bucket. Then she told police that she put the remains near the garage in the backyard. And I'm sorry this is graphic, but people need to know. But this is what's going on. And
this is not an abnormal reaction.
No.
I'm telling you. Like, you need to hear us say
this. I can't tell you how many women I've talked to who have given birth on the toilet. And have panicked at what to do with the remains. This is not something that we're talking 1, 2, or even 3 times. So the police go out, they find the bucket, there's some stuff in the bucket. It's not exactly what they're looking for. So they say they go into the bathroom, toilet's filled to the brim with blood, blood clots, and tissue, as they're referring to it. And I really apologize because my stomach is churning, but the coroner's investigator checked inside the toilet bowl and felt what appeared to be a small foot with toes.
Poor baby.
The toilet was later broken apart and the fetus was retrieved.
Which is what they had to do.
Yes.
You can't, this is a person.
Yes.
And I don't care how pro-choice you are, this is a person. This is a 22-week person. And it is not okay. It is not okay to just to do these things. It's not okay.
No, and they did an autopsy on the baby, and it was determined that it had intrauterine fetal demise. Essentially, it passed away in the womb, and that's what caused the miscarriage.
So hopefully this little one did not suffer.
Due to severely low amniotic fluid from the premature rupture. So hopefully this woman did not birth a baby who was alive. It sounds like she didn't. But you and I have dealt with situations where they have.
Yes.
And I've had... Right.
And this mother, as far as we know, did not take abortion pills.
Right.
I would say that's a question. I'll be honest with you. We don't really know.
Yeah. Just her behavior seems erratic.
Yes.
And that could be for a variety of reasons. This is very traumatic, what she was going through.
Mm-hmm.
But that is some very erratic behavior. And her walking out AMA makes me wonder what exactly was going on.
But what is happening both in our nation and internationally is women are taking abortion pills at later gestations. They are delivering babies at home alone. Mm-hmm. It's extremely traumatic. It's extremely graphic, and it's wrong. But the reality is, yet again, this is not a situation that occurred because of abortion bans. I don't know why the hospital offered her induction 3 times and then decided to think about it. That's the most bizarre thing to me is, do these hospitals not do training?
Well, and
they did not have legal counsel that is aware of what their rights are and what they can and can't do. And why are they deciding to just wait in these moments and not make decisions?
Talking in the terms of hours, which is actually not that long when you're talking about labor induction.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what to think about the whole, they were waffling on it, because quite honestly, you can't just walk in after leaving AMA 3 times before, demand an induction, and then within 20 minutes. Like,
well,
there you
this would have
are.
been 2 times, would have been the third time.
Right. So,
But yeah, so who knows why they are deciding to stop and mull. That's a very odd decision to make at that point.
It's a very vague decision. I don't know if they're actually mulling, or is this like it actually takes time to get things set up, and this woman, her life was not in imminent danger.
I think she's fine now. I mean, I'm sure she's extremely traumatized.
Sure,
but I think
she's
physically
being charged with a felony.
Right, and it is a felony to abuse a corpse, and this was a corpse. Like this poor little one that thankfully seems to have passed in the womb and hopefully did not suffer, was not treated well after death, was not treated with dignity after death, and that's a felony. Like this is not an abortion-related charge.
No.
But we have to realize that this is not the fault of abortion bans. This has nothing to do with abortion bans. It seems that the hospital was willing to do an induction, which is not an abortion.
No.
So if a woman is in medical danger in any trimester, but especially in the second and third trimester, induction of labor is a way to solve that. And sometimes it comes with an extremely unfortunate side effect of losing the baby. Mm-hmm. But it is not an abortion. Now, the only way that it would be an abortion is if you were basically, you're totally healthy, everything's fine, you decide to induce. Like that, there is a way to have an abortion that way. Right. But if the mother's life is in danger or her bodily function is in danger, she's in a bad way and she needs to have this baby right now. And this could be HELP syndrome, this could be gestational diabetes, this could be preeclampsia, this could be premature rupture of membranes, okay, and other things as well, but those are the big ones. An induction and early delivery of the baby is not considered an abortion by even the most ardent pro-lifer.
No. And so what this woman went through is traumatic. It sounds like the hospital responded accordingly. I mean, Ohio, abortion is legal up until fetal viability. They offered induction. She left AMA twice. But people are upset that she's facing a felony over the treatment of this baby.
Right. But the reality is it is a baby. This was a child. This was a person. And that child needs to be honored.
Right. And
just like if it was abuse of a corpse of an infant or a toddler or a child or a teenager or a senior.
But I also want to point out that this is, I mean, obviously the mother did something wrong. She was going through something traumatic and now she's got, I mean, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. And women in these situations,
they don't think clearly.
Yeah. It's a very stressful situation. It's very scary. Stressful. You're in pain. You feel like maybe you're not being heard.
And I've had clients make, I mean, just extremely bizarre decisions.
Yes.
Because they simply don't want, they don't know what to do. Because they're traumatized. They're in a medically fragile state after just delivering. And now you've got, I can't even imagine. And so I honestly, I don't even know what to think about this case other than, one, I don't understand why people are upset
about the abuse of a corpse charges.
About the abuse of a corpse charge, because it's
frankly what happened.
It's what happened. It didn't have to happen, but at this point, I don't think that this was. Certainly, this is an abortion ban issue, and officials have said this has nothing to do with abortion. It's legal in Ohio up until viability.
It's very weird that they're calling it. I think they're grasping at straws.
They're grasping at straws. This has nothing to do with abortion bans. This is the mistreatment of a corpse. Now, I guess the argument is a 22-week-old baby a corpse? Because they're saying, well, women aren't required to bury their miscarriages or whatever, at any other point. And you're like, well, I don't.
Whatever.
Grasping at straws. It's very sad. I don't know what kind of state this woman seems to have been in, but it certainly didn't seem stable.
No, she needed help.
To be in and out of the hospital that much, leaving AMA, coming back, leaving again, there was something going on there.
Yeah. And she needs support. And I wish, like I said, just like some of the other cases, I wish she had messaged us. I wish we could have helped her.
Yeah.
So this is the last one.
This is the last
and
one.
I think this is the toughest one.
It is, because again, we have a situation where this is not someone seeking an abortion. This is someone who is miscarrying. And again, we have a woman who's died. And so this is...
And a baby who's died.
And a baby. And so this is, again, out of Texas. And it is a woman who was not seeking an abortion, was very happy with her pregnancy, but at 17 weeks was miscarrying.
Mm-hmm.
And so The only
And
information
a 17-week baby is never viable.
that's just
They are not large enough to survive, unfortunately.
Right.
They're too early to survive outside the womb.
Yeah. And so they said fetus on the verge of coming out, its head pressed against her dilated cervix. 17 weeks.
Which sounds like rupture of membranes to me, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. And so Texas said that they had to wait until there was no heartbeat and that it would have been a crime to give her an abortion.
Which is, she needed a delivery.
Right. So, one, like, she's not seeking an abortion, so you don't have to worry about whether it's a crime to give her one, because she didn't want one.
Mm-mm. She probably very much wanted her baby.
Right. And so they said at that point they should have offered to speed up the delivery or empty her uterus to stave off a deadly infection.
And speeding up the delivery is honestly the easiest thing to do at that stage.
Right.
Let her deliver the baby, let her hold the baby, let them bond as much as possible. I mean, the baby's not going to be living, which is super sad and awful, but give them a chance to meet their child and spend time with them, even post-mortem.
Right. So, but the doctors are apparently saying they had to wait until there was no heartbeat. And so it was 40 hours later that they were able to speed up the delivery. And so 3 days after she delivered, this woman dies of an infection.
Which is awful.
Awful. Important to note, this case came out of 2021. So this is not an abortion ban issue per se in Dobbs.
Well, what time in 2021?
So I don't know if they gave a date. Let's see, September.
Oh, so it's post-Dobbs. Right?
No, Dobbs was 2022.
Oh, goodness.
So
of course it was.
Solidly almost a year before Dobbs.
Okay, that's me.
Yeah, so this is not a case of Dobbs came down and everything is awful.
Okay.
Because this is pre-Dobbs.
Pre-Dobbs.
So abortion is a federally protected right at this point.
Yeah, so it's illegal in Texas. They have this weird mechanism for enforcement.
Yes. So now Texas had some interesting things going on that apparently led doctors believe that they could not
do an early delivery to save her life, which is just insane. Like, there's no, pro-lifers do not want women to die.
No.
Like, we don't want anyone to die. That's why we're pro-life. And pro-life laws should not and are not written to penalize women seeking home abortions or cause women to die who are experiencing miscarriages or cause women to die who are experiencing post-abortion complications, whether they got that abortion illegally in their state or legally out of state. This woman should have been treated much, much differently. Much differently. She should have been delivered early, which was already threatened, right?
Right. I mean, they're saying that baby is on its way out.
Yeah.
Cervix. And they had some, I actually have like a lot of problems with the way that this was reported, because I think at one point they say like, we tracked down, and track down is the term they used, this woman's family.
Which is so awful.
And I'm like, can you imagine?
Leave them alone.
Leave them alone. So they're doing like some hardcore investigative journalism
for this poor family that's been through enough.
For this poor family that has been through enough.
So the other thing to note is that this young woman was Honduran, and at least her husband does not speak English well, because they talked about someone like using a Spanish translator to get his reaction. Mm-hmm. I don't know what her ability is to speak English, but I do know that you need a translator, and I don't know if she had one. Mm-hmm. But it is harder for people to advocate for their own health and the health of their family when they don't speak the language. Mm-hmm. And that's not a uniquely American issue. That's an issue no matter where you are. If you get sick, like I remember my grandpa, this was a long time ago, but he got sick in France and he doesn't speak French. Mm-hmm. And he had a terrible time trying to figure out like what was going on, because everyone in the hospital speaks French except him. Mm-hmm. And so that's a complication, not her fault, certainly.
Sure.
And people have the right to a translator, and they have a right to get the help that they need to understand what's going on. But no, she should not have died. However, her death, again, is not the result of abortion laws.
Yeah.
And we need to stop pretending, we society, we politics, we lawyers, we whoever, we need to stop pretending that if we need to make abortion legal to save women's lives, because that is not the case. It's just not the case. We can have laws that protect women from life-threatening circumstances, and we do have laws to protect women from life-threatening circumstances.
Well, and here's the thing, all right? And so they're saying, like, we have to wait until there's no fetal heartbeat. We have to wait till there's no fetal heartbeat. This woman was 9 centimeters, 8.9 centimeters dilated.
At that point, like, if you sneeze, the baby's going to come
I was
out.
about to say, at 17 weeks.
You don't even need to be that dilated.
Right.
So I delivered my babies at 24 weeks, and like they were like, don't cough. Like they were like, you're 6 centimeters, we're going in for a C-section, lay really still.
So, and the radiologist who did the ultrasound, I guess, said that the miscarriage was in progress. So, but when Barnica's husband arrived, she told him doctors couldn't intervene until there was no heartbeat.
Which doesn't make sense. That is not the purpose of pro-life laws. That is not the purpose of abortion bans. And it sounds like, based on these stories, what we need is better education of doctors,
yes,
and hospital administrators.
Because here's the thing. Texas's new abortion ban had just gone into effect. Now, again, this is prior to Dobbs. It required physicians to confirm the absence of a fetal heartbeat before intervening unless there was a medical emergency.
Which this woman certainly was experiencing.
Yes, and it says it required doctors to make written notes on the patient's condition and the reason abortion was necessary.
Which also could be considered an early delivery.
So
why?
Which, by the way, is like standard things for doctors. Like when doctors perform procedures, they have to write a note about it.
Right, they have to document it. Like we do that at the center all the time.
Now, this article writes that as if that is just like some unreasonable expectation.
Right, we document everything. Like our nurses document everything, because if you don't document it, it didn't happen. Like that's the nurse rule, right? If you didn't document it, it didn't happen. So we're like way out of time. However, what we want to say, this is the bottom line: abortion bans are not killing women. Hospitals need to have better education regarding what's okay and what's not okay, because intervening in life-threatening circumstances is certainly okay. And I would hazard a guess that the law is going to come down on the side of the doctor if they can prove, which in this case would be very easy to prove, that they felt the woman's life was at risk.
And again, this news article, which has a pro-choice slant to it, no doctor in Texas or the other 20 states that criminalize abortion has been prosecuted for violating a state ban.
Not a single doctor.
Not a single one.
And so this is since 2021. This is 3 years.
Information.
Yeah.
At its finest.
So okay, so we need to stop it with the stupid, scary commercials making women think they're going to go to jail or be arrested. You're not getting handcuffed to your hospital bed.
In your car.
No. Doctors are not being prosecuted. Women who are having illegal abortions are not being prosecuted. Women who are having miscarriages are not being prosecuted. And it is not illegal to deliver a child early or even perform an abortion when the mother's life or major bodily function is at risk. These cases could have been avoided not by lifting abortion bans, but by following the laws that are already in place.
Mm-hmm.
And making sure that women get the help that they need, which they can get, and abortion can be illegal at the same time. Those two things can exist at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I am so frustrated because I run a very small medical clinic, right? We have 3 nurses. We see patients that are not emergent, when a law changes, you bet your bottom dollar that my entire job is to figure out what it means, is to figure out what the heck it means and how it impacts our clients and how it impacts my nurses, and talk to lawyers and do the research and read the law and talk to the experts. Why are these hospitals not doing that? Because I can guarantee you they have the staff available.
I don't understand.
And I would wonder if they're not holding this up in order to prove a point. And that's criminal.
I kind of think they are. I mean, I guess we can't really say for sure, but I just find it hard to believe that people who are smart enough to be doctors, they've gone through so much schooling, they're well read, there's research involved. You can't tell me that you can't understand a basic law.
Well, not to mention, hospitals have their own legal departments.
That very clearly states in the case of if the life of the mother is at risk in a medical emergency, and they're all arguing it doesn't define what a medical emergency is. But then they turn around, and anytime that a law tries to make a medical definition, they don't want to listen to it.
Right, because they want these, and I'm going on a limb here, but I'm going to say that people who want abortion to be legalized are going to get as much mileage out of these women's lives as possible, and it's disgusting.
Yeah.
Because that is not how they deserve to be treated. They should have gotten medical care. Mm-hmm. They should have gotten what they needed. They should be alive today. but they're not. And if there is even a hint that it's politically motivated because somebody's mad that there are abortion bans, then that needs to be an investigation because that's ridiculous.
Absolutely. And we know that there's financial benefit at stake here. Like, people are losing money because of abortion bans.
Right.
And it is sick and it is twisted if these women are bleeding out and not getting the care that they need, not because of abortion bans, not because, you know, pro-lifers are outside of hospitals picketing saying, like, but because doctors want to prove a point.
Right. And every single case except for the last one, we could have helped. So if you want to make a difference, donate to promiseoflifenetwork.org/donate. We are currently struggling to promote our national @homeabortionfacts.com website. But if we had been able, maybe, and I don't know, maybe if we had been able to advertise our site, if we had been able to push social media ads and internet ads and Google ads, could we have reached one or two or even all of these women and helped them with the education and information they needed to seek the care they needed to save their own lives? Or to save their baby, or to save themselves from trauma.
Right.
And that's what we want to do. We want to educate. We want to help people. So you can donate. That will help educate women. Regardless of how you feel about abortion bans, we should want women to know that they can access help when they need it. Our Jesus moment is going to be Proverbs 29:11. Save those who are stumbling towards the slaughter. Because these women were stumbling towards the slaughter. And unfortunately, some of them have been lost. And it's a travesty. And it should never happen. But hear this, abortion bans are not the reason that they died, or not the reason that they're in trouble, or are not the reason that they suffered. So we need abortion bans, I believe. I'm a fan of them. But we also need to educate doctors, lawyers, and our community about what kind of care women can receive, because they can get the care that they need to save their lives. There's no reason they can't.
And advocate for yourself and your friends, I think, is really important here. I think about this poor woman whose first language was likely not English.
Yeah.
Would it have been different if she had a friend there to advocate for her?
Or a pregnancy center.
Or somebody who cared about her life and the life of her baby, because you can do both, there to help advocate for her. Because what that hospital did was wrong.
Right.
But it's not because of abortion bans. It's because of ignorance.
Right. And you know what? We could have helped her too. Because if she had messaged us and said, I don't know what to do, I'm in this situation, we could have advocated for her. Because frankly, I've communicated with hospitals in other countries.
Yeah. I was like,
I've argued with hospitals.
Duolingo against the world.
I have argued with hospitals in other countries. I can certainly argue with a hospital in Texas.
Yeah.
So please know that these bans are not killing women. Know that fear mongering and propaganda is. Vote your values. And ask God what he wants you to do with your vote today.